The alarms of the rehabilitation wing buzzed weakly in the distance as 34-year-old single dad and janitor Aaron Wells tightened his grip on the mop, his eyes fixed on the woman sitting silently in a wheelchair by the wide hospital window. The day outside was bright, clear, and almost too peaceful for what was breaking inside her. That woman was Sarah Hadley, the once unstoppable billionaire philanthropist whose confident strides once dazzled global stages but had now been replaced by unmoving legs and eyes too tired to hope. Aaron watched her gripping the arms of her wheelchair as if she wanted to stand but had already lost faith in her body. He could see her fighting herself, fighting fate, fighting everything that had taken away her life in a single accident. And something inside him shifted. Something heavy. Something bold. Something dangerous. His own broken past whispered to him, "Help her, even if she doesn't want it. This morning would change everything." Aaron's shift always began at sunrise, long before the first wave of patients entered the hallways. The hospital staff barely looked at him. He was the janitor, the guy who quietly scrubbed floors to keep a roof over his son's head. His little boy, Taryn, was 6 and lived with a chest condition that required medication far beyond Aaron's pay. Every day, Aaron arrived exhausted, carrying the weight of overdue bills, hospital prescriptions, and the fear of failing the only family he had left. Yet he never complained. Hardship had sculpted him into someone who understood pain intimately, which is perhaps why he noticed Sarah even before others did. She always arrived early for therapy, staring out the window like she was mentally measuring the distance between the life she used to have and the one she was trapped in now. She was 28, powerful, sharp-minded, and still breathtaking in her strength, but tragedy had cut her down, leaving her legs unmoving after a crash that took her mobility and, in her words, her purpose. Aaron knew he shouldn't stare. But something about the quiet sorrow around her pulled him in. He had scrubbed this wing for months and had watched people recover, lose hope, fight back, quit, restart, but Sarah was different. He could see her battling an invisible war, one where her spirit fought harder than her muscles ever could. And maybe he understood her too well, because he had fought battles that left scars no one could see. When his wife died during childbirth, he became both father and mother overnight, learning to hold a crying newborn in one hand while scrubbing someone else's floors with the other. Everything he did now was for Taryn. But lately, even he felt like he was losing. Bills were piling up, overtime was running out, and Taryn's next treatment was one payment away from being cancelled. On this bright, cold morning, while sweeping near Sarah's window, Aaron noticed her trembling hands as she tried to shift her weight off her chair. She wasn't trying to stand, she was trying to feel something, anything, in her legs. The sun outside lit the courtyard beautifully, but to her, the day was as gray as her despair. Something overcame him, perhaps empathy, perhaps foolishness, and he spoke without thinking. Not with grand speeches or polished words, but with the raw sincerity only a man who had nothing left to lose could offer. He told her he believed she would walk again, that she still had fire in her eyes even if her body couldn't match it yet, and that he could help her. It wasn't a promise based on medical training or expertise, he had none. It was born of the same stubborn faith that had kept him alive all these years. Sarah looked at him with disbelief at first, stunned by the idea that a janitor thought he had something to offer her. She was used to world-class specialists, not a man in a Navy maintenance uniform smelling faintly of disinfectant and old hope. Her disbelief turned into a short, broken laugh, not cruel, but hollow, as if laughter was the only thing left she could control. The sound echoed painfully across the empty hallway. And then, just as quickly, the laugh collapsed into tears. Deep, desperate tears. She cried not because of him but because deep inside she desperately wanted to believe someone, anyone, still saw strength left in her. From that day, something shifted between them. Aaron's work shift always overlapped with her therapy sessions. He continued cleaning quietly, but his eyes followed her progress, cheering silently whenever she attempted a new exercise or pushed herself harder. She noticed. She started showing up early again, no longer just to stare at the window, but because watching someone believe in her, even silently, made her want to believe in herself too. One morning, Sarah wheeled herself toward him instead of her usual window spot. She didn't speak. She only lifted her hand slightly, inviting his help. Aaron took her hand gently, supporting her weight as she practiced using her upper body strength to shift herself upright. They weren't supposed to do this outside therapy, but no one stopped them. Maybe the staff saw the determination in her eyes and the sincerity in his. Maybe they understood that healing often needed more than medical charts. Days passed, then weeks. Routine grew into rhythm. Aaron learned how to brace her back without putting pressure on her spine, how to spot her when she tried to transfer from the chair to the parallel bars, and how to gently encourage her without making her feel weak. He never treated her as broken. He treated her as someone rebuilding. That mattered more than any expensive specialist ever had. Sarah began talking as he helped her, not about business empires or charity galas, but about fear. Fear of never walking again. Fear of losing her identity. Fear of disappointing the people who once admired her strength. Aaron listened, not with pity, but with the patience of someone who'd lived inside fear for years. He shared stories of raising Taryn alone, the nights they spent in emergency rooms, the times when his son asked why he was always tired. Sarah listened with genuine softness, realizing this man's strength wasn't loud, it was forged quietly in the shadows of everyday survival. One afternoon, during a bright, warm daytime session near the rehabilitation courtyard, Sarah managed to pull herself upright for 5 full seconds with Aaron's support. Her breath shook, her arms trembled, but she didn't collapse. Her therapist rushed over, stunned by her sudden progress. Aaron stepped back, letting her feel the moment without his hands holding her. She stood there, gripping the bars, staring at her own reflection in the window ahead. The sun lit her face, revealing shock, joy, disbelief, and something she thought she'd lost forever, hope. In the days that followed, Sarah improved rapidly. Her core strengthened. Her legs, though still weak, began responding faintly to therapy. Her physical therapists adjusted her program, astonished by her new determination. She credited Aaron silently. He never accepted the praise, insisting he was only there to support her choices. Still, she saw the way he looked at her, not as a patient, not as a billionaire, but as a person fighting her way out of darkness. One bright afternoon, Sarah surprised him by asking about Taryn. She had noticed how tired Aaron looked every time his phone buzzed with a reminder about medication or bills. Sarah had the resources to change their lives instantly, but she didn't want to insult his dignity. So instead, she asked gentle questions, about his dreams, his fears, his son's condition, and what he wished life could be if struggle wasn't always waiting around every corner. Aaron answered honestly. He dreamed of a stable life for Taryn, one where he didn't have to choose between electricity and medication, one where his son saw a father who wasn't running on borrowed hope. Sarah listened with tears in her eyes, realizing the man who had helped her reclaim her spirit had been slowly drowning without a complaint. 1 week later, during a clear daytime session in the courtyard, Sarah did something she had never dared before. She placed both hands on the parallel bars, looked at Aaron, and told him she wanted to try stepping. Her therapist positioned herself behind, but it was Aaron's encouraging expression that steadied her trembling heart. Slowly, painfully, agonizingly, she lifted her right foot. It barely moved an inch forward. But it moved. And that inch was more powerful than any victory she'd ever experienced in her multimillion-dollar world. Tears streamed down her cheeks. She didn't hide them this time. She looked at Aaron with gratitude deeper than words could hold. He felt something shift inside him too, not pride, not accomplishment, but the profound knowledge that kindness could rebuild a human life. That evening, Sarah asked her father, renowned industrialist Braxley Hadley, to meet her. She arrived in her wheelchair but glowing with determination. She told him everything, how she had lost hope, how a janitor had helped her rebuild it, and how she wanted that same man to have a chance for a better life.